Good morning and welcome to today's SEJ Marketing Think Tank. I'm your host, Lauren Baker, founder of SEJ. And with me today, we have Daniel Morrison, or Dan Morrison, from aimClear. How's it going, Dan?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Lauren?
Pretty good, thank you. Pretty good. So today, Dan's going to be working his magic and doing a webinar for everyone called the 3 Steps for Social and Search Marketing Integration for Positive ROI. Or also known as Red Hot Social Marketing Tips, and really getting into how to integrate Facebook advertising, Google retargeting, and everything across the board with psychographic targeting, and really understanding your audience and getting results. But before Dan gets started, we're going to do a little bit of SEJ housekeeping for the webinar, just to let everyone know how we're working this. So Dan's going to be presenting for about a half an hour. During that time, if you have any questions, please enter them into the questions box located on the GoToWebinar control panel. Then at the end of Dan's presentation, we'll be doing a Q&A where I'll be reading him most of the questions, and we will be answering and having a conversation around those. We'll also be having 2 polls during the webinar, one before and one before we start and one before Q&A. And we'll be sharing the results from that. And during the end of the webinar and end of Q&A, we'll also be having a survey for all attendees to be able to give feedback to the team. If you'd like to tweet, the hashtag is hashtag SEJThinkTank. Please feel free to tweet any questions you may have, any comments, whatever. We'll try to review those during the Q&A session as well. Our next think tank will be on October 14th, so we're having a little bit of a break because of PubCon, but we'll have one at October 14th and one at the end of October. So consider this your pre-webinar vacation seminar with Dan today. And what I'd like to do, now that we have a lot of the folks started, is really start with our first poll to give Dan kind of an overview of our audience this morning or this afternoon. So we're launching the first poll right now, basically about your Facebook and or AdWords spend to get an idea of what your monthly spend is on Facebook ads or Google AdWords. So I see that about 40% of you have voted or filled in your poll information thus far. Give you a little bit more time to fill this in, and then we'll get started. All right, almost there. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Going to close the poll. And Dan, you should be able to go back into slideshow mode. Awesome. Okay, and we'll be sharing the results of this poll afterwards. So now, Dan, I'll hand it off to you.
Great. Thanks, Lauren, and thanks, Danielle, as well. And Search Engine Journal, really appreciate it. And folks, really excited to spend a bit of time with you today and talk about how you can integrate your social marketing. We'll go through some social marketing hacks that will really help drive bottom line value for your business. Before we get into that, just a little bit about myself. I am a senior client services manager at aimClear. I've been there about 6 months now. I moved out from San Francisco. I've got about 10 years in the paid search and paid social space. For those of you that aren't familiar with aimClear, it is a fully integrated social search and PR agency, and we are located in Duluth, Minnesota. So up until about 6 or 8 months ago, I actually didn't even know where Duluth, Minnesota was, so I'm going to share a little bit about Duluth with you all. So if you see my map here, here's a map of Lake Superior, and Duluth is actually located on the tip of Lake Superior. I took a wonderful picture when I arrived there this summer. On the left there, that is my dog Lefty drinking out of Lake Superior, and on the right, my wife and my son Finn. So it's a pretty magical place. And then a colleague of mine took a picture from a very similar area or very close area in the winter, and it looks more like this. So I've got a couple more weeks ahead of me of nice fall weather, of leaves changing, and then I'm looking forward to winter is coming, as they say. So great, thanks. Just getting into what we're going to focus on today. So we're going to go through three main topics. Number one, we're going to cover how to inject users into your funnel with social psychographic data. Then we're going to learn how to cookie those users with retargeting pixels so that you can actually create audiences that you own. And then how to basically nurture and convert those users through remarketing and RLSA. I'll explain a little bit more later, but RLSA stands for Remarketing List for Search Ads. So first, I suspect that many of you, in the early days of social, kind of put a claim down and, really didn't see your dollars taking off like a rocket ship from the ROI of social perspective. You were probably leveraging it for, some branding objectives and just kind of testing it out, but probably a lot of your dollars were spent in Google display and email, and you really couldn't figure out how to make it work. So a lot of times it probably felt like your spend was, you were just taking money and flushing it down the toilet. So today we're actually here to talk about some approaches and some methods that will enhance your social marketing campaigns, through the integration of search marketing and help drive real value to your bottom line. But first, let's talk about the social media managers revolution and kind of their new role in the world today. So, the days I was out at SEJ Summit in New York yesterday, and Peter Shankman got up and talked about the future of social, and he kind of said, the days of likes and follows and fans, within 24 months, though, and even friending folks, those things are all going to go away. So in a sense, like the Pollyanna kind of fluffy KPIs that social was used to, likes, follows, shares, engagement, overall branding and awareness. Those days are not enough for today's social marketers and for today's brands to justify. They need more concrete goals. There are new social goals that folks need to meet, and those goals can be defined as scalable psychographic traffic. So we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what this means, but essentially at a highest level, it means really, understanding your target demographic and building audiences that you later can convert. So attributable conversion. So, conversion doesn't happen with one touch as it pertains to social. So you have to consider your social investment on top of your search investment or your email investment, and really look at that full attributable conversion funnel. It's about getting real links from good authority sites. It's also about getting, social signals from strong users. So getting your content in front of the right influencers, getting them to, to tweet out your content, and, getting links organically, and getting those kind of focused likes, follows, and shares. This will insulate you from harsh SEO updates because you're not buying links. You're getting the links based off of the content that you deliver, the influencers that are making an impact, and also leveraging kind of PR channels to do that. At the heart of every social marketer, actually it's not even social marketer, at the heart of every marketer's objectives should be sales. Using those owned audiences that you create, defining those audiences that are psychographically focused, creating them, driving that traffic back to your website, and then building these audiences so that you can later remarket to them throughout the funnel. Awesome. So that was a little bit of the intro. So let's talk about some of the specifics on how we get there. So psychographic targeting. So psychographics, it's a relatively new word, but what does it really mean? Well, at its core, psychographics are your interests, your affinities, those desires and correspondences, those proclivities, and your politics. If you think about the old kind of direct mail way of targeting, there were demographics. So on the left, you see, we build a targeting segment based upon age, gender, location, her employment, and her marital status. And that's really the demographic view. But on the right, we see that she is a foodie that's into folk music. She likes fantasy novels and competitive boxing. She's non-materialistic. So in a sense, if you're looking at these two mirrored views, the demographics is going to be how the U.S. Census defines us, but the psychographics are who we actually are. They're how our friends and family would define us. And the power of social is so impactful in that leveraging these likes and interests and these psychographics, we can actually build audiences based on the person and who they are, so their personal identity and what makes them tick. So let's talk about how we can build some of these type personas. So for the most part today, we're going to be leveraging examples from Facebook, but these are also applicable across Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's talk about how we can build type personas. So let's say that you own a restaurant or are marketing a restaurant, and you want to get in front of, first you want to root your personas in behavioral intent. So you want to get in front of individuals who are high spenders at mid-range restaurants. And you can see here there are 14.4 million people that up in the right at partner categories. This data comes from Datalogics, but there are 14.4 million people that are high spenders at mid-range restaurants. Where does Datalogics get this data? Well, it gets it from MasterCard. So MasterCard is providing this information to Datalogics. Datalogics, you can import that data into Facebook. So you can cut up all these different audience segments based on their intent, based on how you want to define them. So as you're building these psychographic targets and building these audiences that you later want to remarket to, you also want to consider the source of the data. What does the source of the data give the authority to the data? So Datalogic itself, touts that it tracks over, I think it's like $2 trillion in spend across like 110 different million households and a very large number of different data sources. So they get all this information from offline sales and our actual purchase behavior. So they know exactly where we're spending, when we're spending, what times we spend, and they're sharing this information. So this is all information that is able to be used and leveraged by you as a marketer to build an audience based off of. So once you kind of root your persona in behavioral intent, the next thing you want to do is clarify that intent by getting active with your filters. So you can see here some of the interests are eating at and dining out with, eating out with, playing, buying, going to, getting active with your filters. So it wasn't long ago that I actually presented this slide, and one of the questions was, great, getting active with your filters. What's the inverse of that? What's a passive filter? So I wanted to use the example, let's consider like mountain biking trails in Duluth. Say that someone, within the syntax, mountain biking trails in Duluth. Well, in that syntax, the active filters or the active intent is really, the location, the hours, the directions. But if you're looking at the passive intent, the implicit intent, then you might think of things like trail guides or maps or reviews. Maybe it's the difficulty of trail. So when you're considering layering on these active filters, you also want to think about the passive filters and incorporate that into your creative strategy, into your landing page strategy. And I'll kind of boil it down into a simple phrase. Active filters really answer the question of what's right now. Passive filters, on the other hand, implicit filters answer the question of what's next. So if you anticipate based on the active filters what the next questions that the users will have, then you can revamp your creative strategy, include some of that information on the landing page, and create a higher likelihood of conversion. So you've learned how to root your personas in behavioral intent, how to get active with the filters, how to leverage the implicit filters. The next thing that you might want to consider doing is layering on potential financial qualifiers. So here, this will really add to the mix on someone that's interested in a mortgage, and currently they're an active credit card user and have income levels over 350,000 with net worths into the millions, and their interests are in Rolex, and they have job titles that usually carry high income with. So that in and of itself creates the ability to layer on these financial qualifiers and really get in front of the right folks that are more likely to convert. Just some other examples of what you can actually target in Facebook and the different breakdowns. So we've talked about, using one intent or one behavioral intent to create these personas, but let's chat about how to use two personas layered on one another. So I mentioned a minute ago mortgages. So let's consider, again, this is the source from Datalogics, but there's 27.6 million people that are interested in online mortgages, or people who are receptive to higher online mortgage offers. And then let's say that we want to layer on, people who were previously employed by the military. So here, you can actually layer these two things together and then create ads, and specific landing pages for each of these behaviors and classes. So you can get really targeted and really creative about how you get the right ad in front of them. With search, it's very, you want to have tightly knit keywords or tightly knit ad group and keyword themes so that you can write extremely relevant ads. In social, you also want to get down to a very relevant target so that you can develop your creative, but there is a balance of kind of specificity and scale. It's important that you reach enough people that you can get the data that you need. So, in search, you might be okay with an audience of 50 or 100 because it's going to be highly targeted. But in social, there's the mix of really getting the right group of folks and then getting the right creative in front of them. Again, taking the dual root persona of, behavior plus class and then layering on other specific interests that are active, again, considering the passive, etc. And then you can layer on potential financial qualifiers. And here you've really sown the seeds for, a good audience, a good lead generation potential with your audience. So quick tips or quick recap on tips for building the right personas. So root your persona and behavioral intent. Get active when clarifying your filters, but also consider the passive intent because they'll help conversion rate on the landing page side. Make sure that you research the source of your data and then layer on potential financial qualifiers. So keep in mind the whole goal of building these social audiences are to build them so that you actually own the data. So we're going to talk next about how you get the data and how that data gets into your warehouse. And that is via cookie pools. So what are cookie pools, or what are cookies? Well, I think it was 1994, but there was a Netscape engineer named Lou Montulli that developed the original spec for a cookie. It was funny, I was putting this slide together, a few months ago, and my three and a half year old niece saw it and said, "Oh, can I have a cookie?" And then I proceeded to try to explain to her what cookies I was building this for and how it worked. And I'm going to try to distill it down in the same way that I did for her, even though I still don't think she got it. But basically, let's say I said to her, let's say we just watched Elmo on Netflix, and then we came back and we watched Frozen. Sorry if anyone just got that song in your head by saying the name of the movie. Sincere apologies. So after Frozen was over, she wanted to go back and watch Elmo, and she said, go back to the screen before where it had the previously viewed. Well, in its most simple sense, cookies are the ability to store text files and remember settings on pages visited and, items we put in our shopping cart. So she kind of got it, but really she just wanted to watch Frozen again, so and have cookies. So this was actually an image from Lou Montulli's blog and the ad exchanger. So in a sense, these psychographic targeting audiences that you're creating are new assets that are similar to keywords, but are they the new keywords? Are keywords going to go away? No, absolutely not. Keywords are going to be here to stay, but the smart marketers of today need to understand the full data set that they can get, and it exists outside of just keywords. So it's creating the right audiences in social, driving those users back to your website, having remarketing pixels placed on your website to capture their data, tagging the data accordingly, and then remarketing to them. So let's talk about how you can actually, let's first put your campaigns into motion, the ones that you set up with the psychographic targeting, and then we'll talk about how to actually create the cookie pools in Google AdWords. So here we're going to use Facebook as an example. Head over to Facebook, get your campaign set up. We're actually going to use an example of something that we did for aimClear. So, you know, the interests here are disc makers and small business owners that are technology early adopters or Facebook page admins. They might have job titles like music production, music director, recording engineer, music artists. Their age would be 24 to 50, and we're going to put the content in front of folks on their mobile news feed. So you can see up in the top right, this is we're tagging the URL in a way that's unique, so that we can then later set up this rule in Google AdWords. So you see there's some UTM codes. The source is Facebook. The medium's organic with the red box around it. We've got sell with social marketing. So we're going to go out to Facebook, promote this with those UTM tags to our target audience, or to use a dark post to promote this to our target audience. And then we're going to let the data come in. And next, we're going to set up our Google AdWords campaigns in a way that starts to capture that data and segment it. So RLSA, Remarketing List for search ads. At a high level, here's how it works. You're going to place remarketing tags on your website. So place the tag on every page of your website. And then it's a one universal tag, and then you can define lists in AdWords based upon rules, behaviors, landing pages, etc., like the number of pages visited. And then we're going to assign those remarketing lists to specific ad groups, and then you can actually set or make bid adjustments based on the behavior, based on the rules that you set, and then you can tailor the creative to interaction within the site. And we're going to go into some more specifics on some folks that use some of these tactics and how they did. But for now, let's talk about the actual tactics of setting it up in AdWords. So head on over to your AdWords campaign, and under the All Campaigns, there's a button called the Shared Library. Here you're going to see a red button that says Remarketing List. If you click that button, it'll pop up a modal, and you'll see here that we're gonna use the post that we just set up, or that we just walked through. And it's Facebook, it's Technophiles, ages 25 to 40 with music job titles. And you can see here that the rule is where the URL contains sell with social. So that's where that unique parameter, that unique identifier came into play. And you can actually click the box that says, include past users who match these data rules. So Google can go back, assuming you've got your analytics set up, they can go back and kind of look at the past data that comes from that. Even after you can set this up after. So here we've got a membership list duration of 30 days and just a little description of what it looks like. And then you can see that this remarketing list, this is where we actually assign them to ad groups. So on the left over here, we've got the campaign and the ad group names, and you can actually see some of the data that's coming in from those. And then on the right, within the display network, you can see what the demographics look like for some of these folks that are seeing these ads. Okay, the last section, so we've talked about how we can set up these psychographic audiences. You publish the ads on Facebook to those audience. You get that data back to your website, and then Google starts tracking all the information on your website that you can use for remarketing purposes. So we're going to talk about how to nurture and convert, some of the traffic here, and really we're going to talk about nurturing by way of not annoying today, and there are many other strategies that we could get into, but for the sake of time, we're going to talk about how to not annoy with your remarketing strategy. So there's so much data out there. There's so many different touch points, pages visited, time on site. There's so many different networks that you can layer on and filter data from. So this hyper-segmentation really requires lots of that data, but in order to get through it, you really need to have a well-thought-out strategy, and it really requires a certain amount of precision. Otherwise, your remarketing campaign can be dangerous. It can be dangerous for your brand. So really, too many advertisers today are really shooting first and then aiming. And you've really got to think through what your full strategy looks like before you start to shoot. So take aim first, because at the end of the day, if you don't think through it, if you end up with your, all the electric cords and everything, like you saw a couple slides ago, you're going to end up being more creepy than you actually are helpful. So it's important to kind of think through how you can actually help your users, how you can help them along the funnel, and how you don't want to be that stalker brand. I mean, over-intense remarketing or kind of leads to banner blindness and can have some real negative implications on your branding. So the first step to not being annoying and not being creepy is mapping your customer journey. So you can see there's different stages of the funnel. Let's say that somebody goes to your website and just goes to the home page. Well, you may want to remarket to them with like general brand awareness. Come back, learn some more. However, on the other hand, let's say that somebody makes it to an individual product page. Well, for those folks, you might want to go back and create an ad that says basically, come back to these size 9 shoes. And then for somebody that actually puts the product in their cart but then abandons, you may have an offer where you want to offer them 20% off if they come back within 24 hours to purchase the product. So, mapping the customer journey and kind of tailoring your approach to what they're seeing or the data that you're seeing will help improve and make sure that your campaign is useful. So one of the things you might want to do is set some frequency caps on your ads. So here, this is basically set up 3 impressions per week for this campaign. Now, if you've got 1,000 ads in one campaign, then 3 impressions per week is not going to go very far. So it really depends on your campaign structure and the way that you have things set up in terms of how many times you'd want to get in front of them. Since this is remarketing, I tend to say be more aggressive. Get in front of users more. They've already expressed intent. We've worked with brands in the past that, some brands have a frequency of 5 to 7, seeing an ad 5 to 7 times before conversion rate doubles. And then there's a drop-off, sometimes around frequency of 11 or 12. So it really depends on what your product is, your service is, how your campaign is structured, that you may want to set up these frequency caps. But remember, this is remarketing, so you can get aggressive with it. You might not want to be so aggressive with prospecting, especially if you don't have a lot of good filters. If you're just reaching a mass audience, you don't want to just show your ad everywhere all the time. But when you're doing remarketing, it's okay to be a bit aggressive. Next, you can segment based upon behavior. So here we've got, basically sessions anything greater than 3, where it's been, less than 2 days since their last session, and the duration is greater than 60 seconds. So you can get really creative with the filters that you're seeing, and really segment some of that data based upon the behavior on the site. Last, setting up a membership list duration. So you can see here, and I mentioned, or I didn't mention this earlier, but I wanted to mention. So when we set up the Google AdWords campaign or the Google AdWords remarketing list, and we had all of the data coming in from Facebook. So one thing that we like to do is set everything up coming from Facebook, but then also set everything up coming from Twitter and LinkedIn, but then grab one kind of social refer, so everything social. So really setting up different segmented lists, you can test out which is going to work for you and which isn't. But getting back to the membership list duration, so here you can see that the duration is at 90 days. Now, the most that Google will allow is 540 days. And while it might be very tempting to do that full 1.5 years, just know that most users actually don't clear their cookies. So there's a very high likelihood you could be following that user around for the entire time. So you really want to understand, what the purchase cycle is for, for your product or service. Let's say it's an annual car insurance. Well, you may want, 12 to 13 months in terms of list duration. Let's say it's a free 7-day trial. You might want kind of 7 to 15 days so that you're timely and you're not, coming back 30 days later when it's just a very short, a very short point. Or if it's a 48-hour flash sale, you may just want 1 day. So get everybody that came to your site, and then for the next day, hit them hard with ads. So let's talk about a couple of folks that actually, implemented some of these tactics and some of the results that they saw. So optimizing bids based on intent. So there's a tire reseller that increased sales by 22% just by bidding up anyone that went to the homepage. So they basically said, I'm willing to pay 75% more for anyone that's been to my page already or been to my site already than people that haven't. And then they saw sales increase by 22%. Another thing you can do is broaden your keywords. So there was a vacation tour company that increased conversion rate by 300% by bidding on these broad keywords. Keywords like gift and holiday gift. And the only reason they would do that is because it's okay to spend, 10 or 15 or even $20 on someone that you know purchased from you in the past, to spend that much for such a broad term. So, bidding on terms like insurance or mesothelioma, those terms can be anywhere from $50 up to $300 a click. The only way that you should be willing to pay that $300 a click is if you know that someone has been to your site before and has a high likelihood to convert. And then ultimately you can kind of customize your ad text. So there's a telco customer that has 3 different services: TV, voice, internet. And basically what they did are folks that went to each of those individual services on their site, they created specific creative just for folks that made it to the TV site. So they had specific ad copy based on their visit data, and they saw a 66% decrease in cost per order. So just knowing about how the consumer is interacting with your site, where they're going, what they're doing, will help improve your tactics to achieving success. So real quick, super high level takeaway: use social, use Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn for very top of funnel awareness, but define the audiences in a way that you think makes sense to your customer base, in a way that you think makes sense to later remarket to them. We worked with an apparel company that basically they knew that people that bought dresses had twice as likelihood to convert on tops than they did on any other product in their product line. So having that data and getting that data at the top of the funnel, and then setting up cookies to gather that data into your own audiences that you curate, that you optimize, and then pushing the data forward to really say, okay, for everyone that bought a dress, let's also show them tops. So using all of that data at your disposal for remarketing and RLSA purposes. One thing I do want to kind of wrap up with is RLSA is hard to do at smaller scale. So at a much larger scale, RLSA becomes very impactful. So you might want to start, if you've got a smaller scale, you might want to start with display remarketing and some other more simple remarketing tactics, because RLSA really requires quite a bit of data to make informed decisions and to get those audiences big enough to market to them. If you want more information about super secret psychographics, we've got a weekly email that goes out. There's only a couple hundred folks on it, and we send it out weekly. Feel free to email Megan and you can get on the list. And Lauren, I think, I don't know how we're doing on time, but I think I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Absolutely. I'm just emailing right now to join the super secret psychographics list. So very good stuff, man. Awesome. It's great to hear, and a lot of the kind of the real world examples are really cool. So what I'm going to do is launch the final poll. Hopefully it will let you share your screen after doing so. So here's a quick one. How was the level of content in this webinar? Please let us know. Too low level, too technical, too high level, or just like Goldilocks from the Three Bears, just right. So please take the time to go ahead and fill this out, and then afterwards we'll be going through a lot of the questions that were sent over during Dan's presentation. If you have any questions that you'd like Dan to go ahead and answer, if you're running any Facebook campaigns where you really don't know where the money's going, or you've tried linking up Facebook advertising and Google retargeting and it's not necessarily working for you, or hey, possibly you have some tips that we'd like to discuss, let us know. We'll go ahead now and close the poll. Really interesting results here. So Dan, it looks like you got it right on the money. For the most part, 65% of the SCJ marketing think tank said that this was just right. So very cool. And it looks like there was a lot of learning. There's a lot of learning that can be done by the audience with too technical and high level. So maybe we can send out a refresher, and we will be sending out a refresher and a copy of this after the webinar is over. And no one said too low level. So awesome, great stuff.
We should have done a poll on the artwork in my hotel room.
Or the or whether or not you can hear the police sirens going by.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm in New York right now, so
hey, cool. So let's get started with questions. First question from K Money in Kansas City is you know they've set up. It looks like they've set up Facebook custom audiences, right? That was like one of the first things they did when setting up their Facebook ad campaign, is trying to really hit in existing audiences and lookalike audiences of people in their newsletter. However, when they set that up, they noticed that there were no interest or demographic information given to them by Facebook. Can they utilize Google retargeting and some of the data that's captured from there to get a better feel of what that lookalike audience is? Or are there any methods to doing so, or is it better just to leave that up to Facebook since they know what they're doing?
Yeah, good question. I'm actually going to start by saying that you know, your Google doesn't allow for personal information targeting yet. They have said that sometime this year or in the coming year they will, but one way to get basically your customer information into Google is to set up those custom audiences and then tag them in a way that visitors get back to the site, and then you know that those are actually your customers. So that is a good workaround for that. In terms of the question around lookalikes, so yeah, I can see how you can use the lookalikes, create that segment, and then go into, you know, create that segment, drive users to your website, tag them with the lookalike, whatever, maybe it's a lookalike of 1% or a lookalike of 10%, and then use Google Analytics and kind of the affinities report to, you know, look at what some of the lookalikes there, you know, look at what their affinities are. So there's definitely kind of a workaround to probably seeing at a high level what some of that looks like. You know, Facebook's not going to tell you, but it would actually be a super interesting test to like run a 1% and a 10% and see how expansive that audience opens up in the Google Analytics affinities report. Great question,
Okay,
K-Money.
great.
That's
so
that K-Money.
K-Money always comes up with the best questions. Next question from Michael, who has a couple. He's been setting up, he's been having trouble getting qualified leads in Facebook because specifically looking for parents who have a fair amount of money, but I guess with the more financial filters that are added on, such as income and net worth, Facebook basically ups the bill per click and per whatnot. So before he starts spending this much more, how does he know that, first of all, the people are seeing the ads that they're putting together, and if they don't click on it, how do they know if they're necessarily seeing the ad creative or not?
So let me try and understand the question. So basically, his reach is low. It seems like, you know, he's got the right, or the clicks are actually expensive. So the traffic that's coming in is expensive. You know, the theory is that that because these folks are worth more, they make more money, Facebook is charging more. So actually, you know, there's probably a little bit of, you know, maybe your reach is too specific. So like I mentioned, in Google, you might be okay with, you know, a reach of 100. In Facebook, you want to create a decent enough size audience that there's some scale there, because Facebook's algorithm is really going to get the efficiency at a bigger scale. So it's that balance of trying to get the right, you know, the right number of folks in reach, and then you know, kind of scaling up from there, and that's where you're going to get your efficiency gains. Now, to the other point about like understanding there are metrics within Facebook between reach and impressions. So reach is really going to be the unique reach that you see, which is only unique at the account level. So if you're running multiple accounts, you're going to have some overlap there. So looking at those reach metrics in Facebook should give you a good sense of your reach. And then you can also look at, and this is the same is true for Google AdWords, display is, Facebook and Twitter are display like other display networks. They just allow for a lot of psychographic targeting. So looking at your view-through conversion rates might be another area where you can kind of tell the folks that are seeing my ads may not be clicking on them, but it is creating enough brand awareness that they are at least converting through some other channel at some point.
Great, great. Good stuff. Next question is, you had an example, I think it was the music example, where the creative, like the image in the ad itself, actually didn't have any text on it, right? And Facebook typically allows for 20% of that ad image to utilize text. Do you typically see a higher click-through or higher engagement when you're utilizing text or copy in that ad image itself, or utilizing that entire space for an image? Do you see any trends or numbers there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the tactics that we like as it pertains to blog posts, because that was promoting a blog post to get folks back to the website, we usually don't layer on text into the images. Now, in direct response, where you've got promotions or offers, that you really want to be, prevalent, then you might say 20% off, or big brands we've even worked with really use that, use their logo. And we've seen really wide variety in terms of doing a test of like including a logo versus not. It kind of goes back and forth, and it really depends on your users and how they interact with your brand and what that looks like. So I'd say, not to try and dodge the question, but it really depends on like what the post is about and how you're going to leverage the text in that image. But then run a test and see, should you put the 20% off in the image, or should you just put it in the status update or the text update?
Because if you're naturally sharing a post, or if someone's naturally sharing a blog post or an article they've found, there's not going to be a call to action in the image. So at the end of the day, setting up that ad to look like a very natural post may even get more clicks because people won't even know it's an advertisement.
Yep.
Right? But you don't necessarily want to do that if you're sending that person directly to a page where there's a transaction or an offer. Because then they might be like, hey, I clicked on this what I thought was a story, and I'm getting a sales page. So it sounds like what you're also saying is to really set up expectations to the user as well. If they're going to a place where they can make a purchase, then that call to action or that 20% off or whatever helps set that up where they're in the mindset to make a sale. Whereas if they're looking at something informational and something that's very natural, they might go to the post and then make a decision like to share the post or to send it to a friend or something like that.
Absolutely, and that's all part of kind of seeing the funnel and saying, is this to your point, is this a general brand awareness? Is this information? Do I just want to get the user to my site to grab more information, or do I want to kind of set their expectations that we want them to buy something on their next click?
Yep. Next question. This comes from Michael as well. How can I grab people from a competitor's page or a page where I know people would be interested in our services? So, for example, if I you get this, if I'm Samsung and I want to hit people that have an iPhone, how do I grab people from Apple's page? Or probably a smaller example, how do I get people that like specific pages to see my ads?
Yeah, so I mean that happens within the interest targeting. So you can target Apple, people that like Apple's page. You can target people that like apps that exist in Apple Store. You can target people that like iTunes, and so I think it's really about expanding from the root of everyone that loves Apple. What are some other things that they love about Apple, and it might be apps that are again specific to Apple. So I think just kind of expanding from literally typing in Apple and Apple watches and Mac computers and things like that, and kind of building out from there.
Gotcha. Cool. Other than Facebook, how effective are Twitter and LinkedIn ads for this same similar formula?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your objective. Twitter, we have a lot of success when we're working with HR companies or recruiting or really professional kind of B2B. And CPCs are extremely expensive in Twitter. I mean, you can be paying anywhere $10+, whereas Facebook's going to cost you 60, 75 cents. But what we find out is the leads that are coming into HubSpot can actually be worth a lot more, even though you're paying $10 from Twitter or LinkedIn. So it really depends on, Twitter is very dynamic and it's very conversational based. And if you're a hosting provider, for Drupal, and one of your competitions, their server goes out, and you're following kind of the Twitter stream, you can jump into that conversation right away. So it depends on your objective and how you get in front of the users that are active there. So, they can be very effective, but they require a little bit of a nuanced strategy.
And then LinkedIn can be super expensive as well. One thing I'm working on, I just set up a Facebook campaign for a client last week, and at first they really, really, really wanted to launch everything at once, right? They wanted to launch Facebook, Twitter, some other social channels all at the same time, but I went back and I was like, look, let's launch Facebook first, because we can do so in an economic fashion where you can set up all of these multiple campaigns that you want to go after, and we can gather interest information, we can gather user information, we can gather all the information and data and test these markets first, and then apply that to some of the other platforms like Twitter, which can be more expensive at the same time. Another thing, another question I have on here as well, which is kind of relevant, is how important is your organic presence on these social networks when you're setting up an ad campaign? Can you have a poor organic presence in a successful Facebook ad campaign? Or if you have a rich and engaging organic presence, does that actually help your ROI on Facebook, or can it?
I mean, leveraging the social networks is all about having a conversation with your customer base. And if you're providing them value from a paid standpoint, but you're not providing them value from an organic standpoint, then you're losing on the total amount of value that you can provide them. So, while it's not going to, like, having a better organic presence isn't necessarily going to change Facebook's algorithm on the paid side, it will ultimately change how successful you are with those consumers. So, I mean, I think it's important to have both, even though organic presence is certainly dwindling, or organic impact is dwindling. It's still there, and it doesn't have much of an impact as it did, but it's important to keep that value in mind.
Well, it's important to also understand that your Facebook advertising is a hybrid between advertising and organic. There's still interaction, there's still likes, and there's still shares. So I've seen Facebook. Oh, go ahead.
Well, you can use, much like with PPC, you use data very quickly to inform your SEO titles and your headlines. Well, with Facebook targeting, you can go out and target folks that aren't your customers and see how they react. If you're an apparel company and you think your target market is 25 to 34, white women, and you find out that your actual market is 35 to 44, Hispanic women, then you can use that to better inform what you're doing on the organic side.
Mm-hmm. Across the board. And if you're launching an ad campaign, I see this all the time where there's an ad showing up in the news feed that has comments and questions and no response. So essentially, anyone can come in and answer those questions, right? So if you don't have an organic game plan, or if you're not communicating what's going on in paid to organic, and letting them know, hey, here are the posts, here are the links to the posts. Please monitor these to make sure that no one is doing pretty much the equivalent of bid jacking a Facebook ad campaign by jumping on there and talking about your competition or whatever,
Yeah.
then that could really devalue the ads as well, right?
And it's missed opportunities. I mean, if you're not jumping in and communicating, it's missed opportunities to make an impact with your customer.
Cool. Similar question adding on to this, and we didn't really get into boosting. So what is the best way to boost a Facebook post, and how can you ensure that new people are seeing each boost as opposed to the same people constantly seeing boost after boost time after time?
Yeah, I mean, you wanna test out different segments. So you may want to boost to certain segments within your fan base. You may want to layer on some interest in some age groups and try and just test out a few different segmentations and see what's working. And understand does video work with this age group better than that age group? And if so, how many times, at what point, at what frequency point do I need to show them a video? Do I need to show them a video as their second engagement or their first engagement? So it's really just kind of segmenting it. Again, going back to that funnel and saying, okay, let's determine when we want to boost. So what days of the week we want to boost. And unless you're using third-party software, you can't determine time of day, but you can at least determine days of week. So you may want to say, let's try and boost for the next 3 weeks on Mondays in the afternoon, and then 3 weeks after that we'll try on Thursdays. So it's really just about using it the same way that you would use dark targeting.
Very cool, very cool. Well, we're at the 15-minute mark, so Dan, I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time this afternoon to visit the SEJ Think Tank and share this great information. For all of the webinar attendees that are still here, we're going to be following up with any questions that we did not have a chance to answer afterwards and via our Twitter stream as well. We're going to be sending out a video of Dan's presentation to all attendees and also uploading that to YouTube, as well as doing a follow-up post on SEJ. So again, I'd also like to remind everyone, once we close or once we end the webinar, we're going to have a quick survey. It's going to take you about a minute or two to fill it out, but it'll really give us a chance to hear feedback from you on our SEJ Think Tank webinars. And again, Dan, where can we find you on Twitter, and where can people reach you that may have some more questions or want to get in contact with you?
Well, on Twitter you can find me at Danimals House, much like Animal House, but Danimals House. And then if you want to shoot me an email, you can find me at daniel@aimClear.com.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Dan, we'll be talking to you soon. Enjoy your flight back today.
All right, thanks, folks. Really appreciate the time.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Ciao.